back to Bread and Butter, everybody. We're serving up the basics for Hearthstone improvement in episode 83. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Tito Santana. Tito, how are you doing today?
Doc, didn't I just talk to you like 2 days ago?
Sure feels like it, huh?
Yeah, and I'm going to talk to you again in like 4 more days. This is like special bread and butter week. It's almost like a bread and butter sandwich this week. Maybe with a little rye on each side. But I'm doing great, Doc. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. Listeners, we also have 2 very special returning guests. We have Pylet. How are you?
Doing well. Glad to be back.
It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you. And we also have WorldEight.
Yeah, really happy.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. Happy to be here again. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be invited to the show. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I think the big question of the day is, what have we been doing inside Hearthstone? WorldEight, we'll start with you.
Sure. So a little bit of life outside of Hearthstone. Unfortunately, we had my boys were sick on Tuesday and yesterday, so I didn't really get to do the day one experience quite so much. But over the course of the day, I got to pepper in a few games here. I got to spectate a lot of games, right? So, I'm with the boys and I got my phone on and I'm watching a lot of games, which is still fine. I saw a lot of decks. Personally, though, I had brewed up this Paladin deck that I'm pretty proud of, and I've been playing quite a bit of it. But I also took a few decks and adjusted them with some new cards, and so, the existing good decks continue to be good decks. I verified that with a few wins and then moved on. But, I have a new deck that I brewed up and I'm excited about it. And so I'm going to be playing a lot of it, I think.
Heck yeah.
I actually played with that deck my first 3 games and I was 0-3. And then I moved on to the Death Knight, the Demon Hunter Pirate. But I am excited to go back to it, especially since I've heard you made some refinements and looking forward to it.
Pylet, what have you been doing inside Hearthstone?
Same as everybody else, trying out some new stuff. I always like trying to take the first few days of the expansion to play homebrews and try to, mess around with, building from scratch rather than taking other decks and refining them. I've been busier this week, so I haven't had as much time to do that, but mainly been doing that with Mage, trying to find either a Tourist Mage or a no minion spell mage and playing around with some of those that I'm sure we'll talk about a lot later.
Now, did you take that no minion mage and face off against WorldEight's Paladin just before the show, or was it a different deck?
That was not the mage. That was Shaman. Yeah,
I don't know what you were playing because the Paladin kind of ran over the Shaman. It was just on the back foot the whole time.
Yeah, I died too fast to see what I was playing. I was playing Bino's aggro Shaman and did not hit any 1 or 2 drops, which is not very good for an aggro deck. So I got run over pretty quick by a bunch of Divine Shields.
I just love the fact that you guys got to play literally right before you came on the show. So I thought that was just kind of a cool coincidence. Doc, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I've been playing some of WorldEight's Paladin. That's in the Coin Concede Discord on the Off Curve spreadsheet. And then I've also been playing a lot of Pirate Demon Hunter. It's just very aggro, and that's what I like to play is aggro and mid-range. And so playing something as aggressive as Pirate Demon Hunter right now, and the combo burst potential it has just tickles my card game fancy. So that's what I've been playing a lot. How about yourself, Tito?
But just remind me too to make sure I bleep out the M word there that you just said. So mid-range. So I'll bleep that one out too. I have been playing a lot. Oddly enough, on the show, I think I've played the least amount of Paladin, but I've played a lot of the Demon Hunter, the Pirate Demon Hunter, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And I was doing really well. I was recovering ranks. And then since I started playing other things, I gave those ranks away and then some. So I'm at the point now where I'm less I was actually thinking that if this was a normal month, I might be able to push for 11 stars this month. I was playing well enough where I thought maybe I could. And those dreams have gone down the drain. But that's okay. WorldEight, what have you been doing outside of the game, outside of taking care of sick kids?
Oh, well, my wife was out of town Thursday through Monday, so aside from taking care of them when they weren't sick, or when they were sick, also when they weren't sick, but I kept them busy, doing things like going to the aquarium with them, and my one son's turning 2 pretty soon, so he's just on the cusp of starting to get it. My other son, I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast, but he went to the aquarium for a whole week as one of his summer camps. And so he was excited to show us all the secret rooms and things like that, which aren't really secrets. They're just like, where the staff eats lunch. But
that's really fun.
He was excited to be back there and, just been busy with the family and all that kind of stuff.
See him walking by. He's like, "Hey, Marvin, how you doing? Good to see you."
So Doc's outside of Hearthstone section is actually not nearly as long as it has been. I haven't played any Magic since last pod. I have played a lot of League of Legends Swarm, which is the multiplayer bullet hell new mode that they came out with. So if you like Vampire Survivors, that's same feel, but you get to play with friends. You don't need to know anything about League to enjoy it. So if you like bullet hells, I definitely recommend giving it a try. And then started playing Baldur's Gate 3 again too. Because that's just a good game, and I felt guilty for not finishing it. So trying to make some progress there. How about yourself, Pylet?
Yeah, I mentioned I'm busy this week. I'm a high school band director, so our marching band camp is this week. So that has been my 9 to 5 all week and a lot of last week. So haven't had a ton of time lately, which is normal for the end of July. I did a couple weeks ago, in between some of my band things, picked up some things on the Steam summer sale, and I played through Dredge, which is a wonderful little game. Very, very short if you're into like 10, 15-hour games. Highly recommend it. But yeah, just been super busy with that and kind of finishing up the summer here before the school year. What about yourself, Tito?
Natural podcaster, I love it. I had a job interview yesterday, and that seemed to go very well. I'm hoping to have a second one next week, so knock on wood. It's still going to be applying everywhere, but it's actually a job in my field, so if I can get back there, that'd be wonderful. Outside of that, I've been making content. Since I got that big boost in numbers from the theory crafting, I made some YouTube shorts of some of that content. I started up a TikTok, and we're just kind of doing the things. And I noticed today, I just did a comparison, because if you have a YouTube and you're a creator, it says like, hey, you've gotten this many views, and you can set it. For the last 365 days, I have gotten 1,909 views, which is not a lot. But the last 7 days, I got 1,028 of those. So basically, 90% of the views I've had this last 365 days has been the last week. So maybe we're onto something. I'm hoping to start building on that. And I'm just very excited about it. But you guys don't want to hear about that now. But you guys want to hear about our decks, cards, and paradise. So what we're going to do here today is we're going to keep it very kind of simple. Although WorldEight has written a book, so we'll have to take a look at that. The history of Perils and Paradise, according to WorldEight. So what I want to do is I want to kind of just talk about each class, what decks are good right now, what decks are memes that may not be good but could be potentially fun, or maybe even have some refining done later, and decks you've enjoyed. And not everyone's going to have an answer for all that, because we haven't played all the classes yet, probably. But let's go ahead and start with Warrior. So WorldEight, what are good decks, what are meme decks, and what decks have you enjoyed in Warrior?
I don't think I've queued a single game of Warrior. As I mentioned before, I've queued about a dozen games total, and but general meta sense is that cheating out Ziliax early with Chemical Spill, and then being able to bring it back again and again and again with the new Druid spell seems very powerful. Some players having 4-7 Ziliaxes throughout the game, and a lot of strategies just can't deal with that. So however the warrior gets there with Like they have an Odin build that looks to end the game, or they have a Reno build. It's all kind of centered around Ziliax right now, for better or worse. It's kind of defining that class. So kind of the big bad in the room is an early Ziliax just kind of ending the game solo. And so, those classes are performing well because they, not a lot of homebrew strategies can really deal with that. And so it's kind of one of those, you need to be this tall to ride the ride. It's like, can your deck get under the Ziliax that the Warrior's going to put out turns 5, 6, 7? Or, unfortunately, a lot of these kind of slower strategies, like even within Warrior, like the big Warrior that depends on the Right Cleaver, it starts getting going on 6, and Ziliax is just gonna overwrite that, any kind of heavy value that you try to get from it. But I'm not everybody. I've only spectated a few games and looking on sites and things like that. That's not my personal experience. I haven't played enough other than, one game against Warrior where I was playing Drum Druid, actually, and they just didn't expect it. No one expects the trees to come out of nowhere and punch you for 40 damage. So I got away with that one. But I'm interested to hear, interested to hear other thoughts here.
Well, I've been playing, I've been trying to make this deck work, and it's probably why my rank is so low. But if you're, dear listener, if you've been listening at all, my Achilles heel is Black Rock and Roll. I want that card to work so bad. It's just one of those cards that 5 mana do nothing, but come on, let's make it happen. And right now, I'm trying to make a Black Rock Roll Rye Reno deck work. So basically, you have the Rye Cleaver, you have a bunch of big taunt minions and big minions, which obviously, like talking WorldEight, obviously Ziliax isn't great for, but you run Reno, which can help if you can get to it. You run the Druid ramp stuff and the Rye Cleaver. You run Odin, or Son of Odin, or whatever it is. I think it's Son of Odin, where you drop in 4 8-mana 8/8s that get buffed and also are cast when drawn. So you get those on Black Rock and Roll. I'm hoping that those might be good. Also, I have a question for everybody. Why is there not an achievement for getting Ham the Hungry and Monstrosity in a sandwich called I'll have a ham and cheese on rye?
That feels like an oversight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tech was probably sick that day when they were trying to come up with all the achievements.
He's too busy in Paris right now. How about yourself, Pylet? What are your thoughts on Warrior?
I haven't played any Warrior. I've played against a few of them, and my experience was similar to what WorldEight described, where there's just so many ways between Warrior and I feel like Druid when we get there. I feel like those two are, because of the Taurus, just combining because they're trying to do a lot of the same things of get the Unkiliax, Perfect Virus, Ziliax down as soon as possible, and then bring it back 17 times between Boom and Hydration Station. And if you don't get under them, then it's really, really hard to come back from. I had success a couple times with some spell damage in Mage, but I don't think that that's consistent. I high rolled a little bit and got there, but it's something we'll see how things shake out. I think if enough early aggro comes up and the lists have to drop some greed, then maybe there's a chance. But we'll see. I feel like I've been saying that for a couple months. So
basically we're saying that Warrior is Big Priest. And can you imagine Big Priest with Ziliax back in the day? That would have been horrible. Doc, any thoughts on Warrior?
So I haven't played it, but I've played against 2 of them. I can't remember the second game, but I know that the first game I was playing as Pirate Demon Hunter, and I dealt 38 damage by turn 4 to kill them. So I don't have the problem with Kiliax right now, but I'm sure that's just where my MMR was matching me up with people. on the ladder, and I just happened to high roll super hard and was able to just get that big of a combo off. But I don't disagree with the discourse on Kiliax. Whenever there's a neutral minion that is that oppressive and that meta defining, it's a problem. And I know Team 5 has it on their radar. It's just, what are they going to do? Like Gen and Baku. Sorry, going on a tangent with Kiliax, but Gen and Baku got rotated out or Hall of Famed after a year. We know that they're more aggressive with nerfs and stuff now, but we don't know if they're more aggressive with Hall of Faming yet. So I do hope that Kiliax gets addressed somehow.
I don't think you need to Hall of Fame it. And the reason why is the other Ziliaxes that you can play are perfectly fine. Play a wide board, give everything ++1/+1 is strong, but I don't think it's overly powerful. I mean, it's powerful, but I don't think it's warping. Get the two of them, Battlecry, get two, have the power doubles, a lot of fun. I don't think that's overpowered. There's a lot of options on the Ziliax. I think one thing that they probably need to do is, I think we're going to see this touched in 2 weeks. I don't want to see, like I said, we don't want to call for a lot of nerfs. I hope we don't get a lot of nerfs, but like this one card, when you're seeing it everywhere and it's so warping, I think they have to do something about it. I personally think that if they take either Lifesteal, Divine Shield, or Reborn off of it, I would think actually taking the Reborn off of, or taking the Divine Shield off of it could be kind of nice, because then they can play it, run into something, kill it, get another one, run into something, and kill it. You don't have to kill it 4 times. It still has a lot of power, but it's not 4 times power every time you get one. So I think that they can probably do something like that, move one of those keywords to a different module or something, or maybe move 2 of those keywords to two different modules, something like that. But I think they're going to address that, and I think that's going to make a big difference. And I think that by nerfing Ziliax again for the 5th time or whatever it might be, I don't think it's bad. I don't think it would be like nerfing something in this set, because it's one thing they try to tend to do is, if a card from previous sets is preventing the current set from developing and blossoming and highlighting the cards, they will address it. So that's my thoughts. What do you guys think that they're going to do to Ziliax, or how could they make Ziliax better without Hall of Faming it? What do you think, WorldEight?
I mean, the precedent here is to adjust the mana cost, right? Is to keep bumping the mana cost and weakening the stats. And I mean, if it goes to 10, that's pretty slow, but the challenge is that people are cheating it out, right? Without actually paying for it, right? Chemical spells, the warrior, Druid actually just has enough mana right now. They'll get to 9, 10, not sweat it. So
warrior does too, though.
Yeah. Now they've got good ramp too. So it's it'll be, they'll have to do something a little bit more creative than just adjusting the numbers. Personally, I think maybe taking Reborn off of the virus module might be enough, because then it's not so awful with the taunt coming back for a few reasons. Some other players have proposed adding some of these things as battle cries. Same kind of purpose. Battle cry gains poisonous when it enters play, right? So that it's more like a one amalgam band kind of effect. Super powerful when you play it, but when it comes back, not that impressive. I think the simpler solution is to remove a keyword, or move the other. Another idea that was floated around is move some Zill's keywords around. Like, nobody uses the first one, the shuffle back into your deck. Maybe that could be the lifesteal or something or the poison, something like that. So that you could still get your perfection, but you just have to kind of pick and choose a little bit more carefully. I do want, I don't have an answer here. I do not envy the team.
I did use the shuffle. I was using it in a Kangor paladin because I'm demented. Pylet, what are your thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, I think shifting the keywords around is definitely a way they could do it, but I don't think that that's the first way that they would want to go, because they made the card to where each module has its own flavor and its own kind of goal. So if you're shifting, Reborn over to the Death Rattle one, then it kind of blurs those lines a little bit. They kind of wanted each module to do a thing, and then you pick two of them that you combine together. I do think that would be one of the easier ways to fix it, but I don't know if it's something they would go for. I also saw someone floating around the idea today of removing Taunt from Perfect, because then you can ignore it and go face, or it doesn't come back now from the hydration station, which is why they're getting 17 of them again. I do kind of like the idea of the battle cry idea, just because then it doesn't get all those back. It lets some of the disruption cards like Dirty Rat affect it and not bring all those keywords into play. So I think that there's ways to do it, but I do think it's a very awkward card because there's so many ways that they could adjust it. There's a lot of words, there's a lot of numbers in all those modules. So there's a lot of things they could do, but what is the right way is I think the tricky part to figure out.
So you just build 2 new modules and you throw some of those keywords on those 2 new modules. And I'm sure they have extra art laying around. They plenty of stuff. All right. I think we've talked enough about Kiliax. I think we've all seen enough of Kiliax. So let's go ahead and move on. And hopefully that it's going to come back up again because it does have Reborn. But let's talk about Warlock. WorldEight, what do you think about Warlock?
Well, Warlock is doing great. According to all reports, it has the best tech in the game, Painlock. Painlock got, terrific support in this expansion, kind of filled in the gaps. The deck had basically 4 slots. I was like, I'm not sure what to do with it. And the expansion's like, well, here's some 4 really good cards you could play with. And so the deck's even stronger now. Good deck getting great cards equals an excellent deck. So if you want to pick one deck to climb with right now, it is Painlock. That is the deck. It's not the most popular deck. That might change over the next few days. Players tend to catch up with the stats, or they keep starting to lose to the same deck over and over, and they're like, well, maybe I'll play that instead if they don't go on the stat websites and things like that. But it is just demolishing anything in its path. I played a little bit of Insanity Warlock, actually, because I took a look at the Pupil, the new little noggling that does the Savara discovery, play 3 spells, discover one of them, specifically to pick up more crescendos. So if you play 3-4 crescendos in a game, that's a really powerful thing, especially because if you have the Pupil, you can burn one of the early crescendos just to clear some pirates out. Survive, and then you save that Pupil for much later, and then your crescendo later on in the game 7 damage, right? That looked really promising, and I don't think anyone else is really trying it, but it seemed really good to me. I don't really think there's really much else going on in Warlock. I know some people had a few Death Rattle theorycrafts, but I have not seen anything like that. Even when I'm jumping around spectating games or going on Twitch. But if you've seen it, I'd love to hear how it's going. Has anyone here played the Painlock at all, or is it just a monster in the closet?
No, I plan on playing it, but I haven't played it yet. It's interesting the way you're saying, because I thought that with the package that they got, they were more of they were still the same kind of, they were Painlock, but they were still a little slower. So it felt like it would be less risky, more consistent looking at the cards. But I mean, it sounds like it's still kind of the same old Painlock, just a little stronger, which I'm excited. I'm going to play it. I like it. I do like facing it, because when I've been playing the Demon Hunter, a lot of people are learning it and they don't know where their breakpoints are yet, and it's easy enough to just say, "Oh, hey, thanks. You get yourself down to 8 health. I'll take care of the rest." And it's pretty easy to do that with Demon Hunter right now. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I hope something else comes out of it. I hope we don't just have. I really want to see more than one deck, and I saw Plagues the other day too, which was kind of surprising. I don't know if there's any good, but it's there. Pylet, what about yourself? Any Warlock yet?
I did try some Warlock. I tried building a Death Rattle Warlock, and that lasted 3 games before I felt like I didn't have an actual deck, so I moved away from it. I was trying to go low to the ground, like eggs, and using Eliza, the Death Knight, that gives all your minions +1 attack. Kind of go more of a token route. I want to come back to it later on and see if I can find something, but it just felt really awkward. It felt like if I didn't have, I never drew Eliza, so that didn't help. But I felt like if I didn't get that, I didn't have a deck. And if I do draw it, I still don't know if I have a deck because I never played it. I did see Donkey had posted a Big Demon Death Rattle one using that package. Interested in trying that out. I feel like that might actually have more promise for the Death Rattle package, just cheating out a couple of the big taunts. But the aggro route needs some work. I do think that Painlock is obviously a really strong tier 1 deck, getting really good cards. Keeps it a tier 1 deck until other things find their way. It can be weak to other aggro, like these guys were talking about. If you are a deck that has a little bit of burn, you can sometimes punish them if they go in too quick and then don't expect something. That's why I want to, if it keeps staying where it's at, I'm probably going to take some of the mage decks and try to tweak them to make sure I always have something to go over the top. But Painlock is very, very good.
Doc?
Haven't played any. Haven't played against any either. So I don't know. I just know that I do want to play Painlock from hearing people talk about it. But I just haven't got around to it yet because I'm just having too much fun playing Demon Hunter and doing pirate stuff.
All right. WorldEight Rogue. What do we think?
Well, Rogue seems to be kind of a little bit in the past still. The first game that I queued up of the expansion, I queued into Excavate Rogue, no new cards. This is, I snuck away for a minute. I'm like, all right, I'm going to get one game in here during my lunch break, and it was no new card Rogue. So I think, a lot of players love that archetype. They're going to hold on to that. There does seem to be some promise with the Warlock crossover with the new 1-drop that summons the 2 imps side by side. It's just a really strong 1-drop in general. Personally, I kind of, from it performing really well and stats and things like that, I wonder if the deck should have always been running Miracle Salesman because it's also an effective 1-drop. But, I've proposed this to some rogue players, some very experienced rogue players, and I got laughed at. So I don't think it was ever seriously considered. Cycle Rogue is interesting. It actually has some new ways it could win with the new Insidious. You can, obviously cycle through your deck pretty quickly that way. Not sure if that's going to be any more promising than previous builds, but there's some people looking at it, but the big new build is an elemental rogue. And what you're trying to do is play an elemental every turn until you can have this big lamplighter, which does 1 damage for every turn that you've played an elemental, and then you shadow step it, breakdance it. If you shadow step it with a Sonya out and you play it again, you get 2 copies of it, and you could deal 30 plus damage pretty easily. And there was a lot of hype about it before the expansion launched, and then it was one of the decks that just kind of fell on its face in the first 24 hours. It looked good on paper, but then it started running into pirate decks, right? And so pirates are one of the other, you must be this tall to ride the ride experiences out there in the expansion right now. If, decks are putting out 48 damage by turn 4, you have to be able to survive that. And a lot of those decks were just running, very questionable elementals, which kind of made it look like an arena deck for the first 6 turns. But, people are pretty motivated to play it because it does very, very well against slower strategies. They can't stop it. And even though it runs a whole bunch of do nothing elementals, a deck like Control Warrior can't close out the game before the Lamplighter Rogue has built up, 50 damage in its pocket or something like that. So new developments here, at least very early on in the meta, are that these Lamplighter Rogues are starting to put in things like Tarslick and Fan of Knives and One Hit Wonder and a lot more early defensive tools to kind of beat off the aggro. But I only played against 2 of them. I played one that was, kind of the Theorycraft version, and I did very well against them. And then this is, as I was playing my Holy Paladin, I played this earlier today, played against the build that had a lot of defensive tools, and I couldn't quite cross the finish line before they were able to get their big turn off. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, it could be the boogeyman of like the Azurite, was it the Snake, right? And, quickly get adjusted in the first balance patch, but the team has said no balance patches likely for the first 2 weeks, so we might have to live with this one for a little bit.
I think it'll be fine though. I don't know. I have seen more than one bounce around featuring Garona, so there was that, which I like. But as far as you said you ran into the Generation Rogue, the BS Rogue. They got some tools for that. So you're not seeing, have you seen any, the tools seem pretty good, the new cards around that. Have you seen any of that in these builds at all?
Well, like I said, the most promising thing is actually the new Warlock 1-drop. And so we'll see. The crossover between Rogue and Warlock didn't seem too promising. Some people seem to be trying the Wishing Well again with a lot more coin support, but it does, at least from numbers, does not seem to be doing well. I mean, I've never played the deck, so I can't speak for it.
As a Wishing Well Rogue main, Pilot, what are your thoughts on it?
I don't know if main is quite the right word because I haven't gotten to it yet since the expansion dropped. There are a lot of new cards that fit into that. I was doing quite well with it the past month. I know no one else was playing it, but I had a build that I made that I thought balanced out the Excavate and the Wishing Well portions really well. Played enough of it that I knew how to mulligan and game plan against certain decks and know, okay, this matchup I need to go Excavate, this matchup I can focus on the coins. But there's some decent coin generation in this set. I haven't been able to play it. I had one game and I faced a druid that just did druid stuff before I could get any cards that actually work together. So it still has that problem. That deck has always had the problem of sometimes you just don't draw the right cards at the right time, and then you're sitting there with a handful of stuff that doesn't actually do anything. So I'm hopeful that I can figure it out and play around with it. The regular Excavate list didn't get a whole lot added to it, like WorldEight said. There's a couple cards that you can add in to kind of speed up the early game, like the Warlock cards, but none of the generation stuff really fits into that shell unless you were doing like what I did. But we'll see. Wishing Well, it's very, very hit and miss, but it's very, very fun when it does work. It worked enough for me to bring it to CCLS pretty much every week, and I was over 50% with it on ladder and top 2K. So it's okay if it works, but it has its awkward games.
Doc, Rogue, thoughts?
I've only played against one rogue so far. But I did enjoy beating Storm Rage with Elemental Rogue during theory crafting. That was an enjoyable gotcha. It was the mirror. And unfortunately Storm Rage was drawing not like the early stuff that he needed to. But it's on my list to get to, because it's just has the potential to be another crazy fun combo kind of deck, and that's what I like. So I'll get to it. I just haven't had a chance.
Yeah, I've enjoyed. This is the second time we talked about beating Storm Rage. I haven't brought it up to him, but on the show, it's a memory for us that you were like, we have to win, and we did. So That was a lot of fun. All right, so now we've alluded to it a lot. Let's talk about Pirate DH WorldEight. What are your thoughts here?
I actually might have to pass this one pretty early. I just, I've seen it, and I know it's good. It was a deck that looked really strong right out of the gate and seems to still be strong. Puts out a lot of damage. I made the mistake of leaving one sock puppet up. It was just the only minion they had on board, and I was at 20 health, and I thought this seems fine. It was not fine. I was very quickly dead on the next turn. So I gained a lot of respect for that deck. And I don't think I'm going to leave up sock puppets anymore, even if they look innocent enough.
I haven't played that sock puppet version. My version is like all in on the pirates, basically, and it brings in the priest cards for acupuncture and hot coals. So it's been a lot of fun. Like I said, I did really well with that. I went 0-3 with your paladin. I said WorldEight sucks. Let's move on to something else. And I went to Daniel Stormrage Sheldon, and I got his Demon Hunter, and I went like 13-3. So I think we've just passed the torch for Master Deck Builder from WorldEight to Stormrage.
I never claimed anything here. I do want to note. I do want to note that in terms of crazy records, JT Snow on the Coin Concede Discord shared a list. It was a shopper DH list, incredibly, that had the pirates on the front end. So like instead of where they would have like mechs and stuff, and then he went 15-1 with it or something absolutely insane. Still, shopper's still good, I guess. But able to weave in some of those pirates early on. I think the Wind Fury one fits in really nicely in the 3 slot or something like that, or is it the monkeys that throw bananas, or I forget. Anyway, it's a much more well-rounded early game. So that could be scary. We'll see what happens there.
I think I have a new challenge because WorldEight is tough to break. Like we're making jokes, Pilot's laughing over there. WorldEight is just like moving on. Next topic, let's go. I like it. It's a challenge. We'll figure this out. So shopper pirate DH. That was kind of it. Is there anything? So I've been using, like I said, acupuncture and hot coals from the priest. Is there anything else kind of in the priest kind of crossover for DH that's good?
I mean, I don't think so yet.
What was that, Pilot?
I don't think so yet. It's on my list to try because they did add a little bit of Big Demon to support, and Priest has some of the Resurrect stuff back. So there's options there. I don't think that they're good options, but it's something that I'm a sucker for, so I'm going to try to build it. I will say it doesn't surprise me with the shopper DH. I've played a lot of that deck over the past couple months. I've went like 80% with it over the past 2 months. It's been insane by putting in more of the early game and just then using shopper as, okay, now I've hit you in the face with my 1 and 2 drops, and now here's a couple 6/5s and Magtheridons, and now you're dead. But Sock Puppet, I love that card. I love that little guy. It's such a good card. You never leave Sock Puppet up. I killed someone from 27 with it one day, and that was my only minion on board.
Yeah, I made the mistake of not taking, like, I think I killed something else. I'm like, a sock puppet will fine, and it just can grow so fast with everything that Demon Hunter can do, and it's fun. I'm looking forward to seeing what else Demon Hunter can do. This is a really strong, fun deck, and they're in a good spot. Doc, I know this is one deck you can actually speak to.
Yeah, so, I mean, I just think it's fun. It's just a bunch of small little tokeny stuff that you get enough of them out and it can close out the game. But there's fun little like swing turns you can plan for. Like, yeah, aggro has like a very like streamlined plan of what it wants to do, but there's fun ways to try to get there, which is why I like playing aggro so much, because you have all these options, but like there's a mistake in an aggro deck can literally throw the game. So you have to get like your lines down pretty pat to be able to just kind of run away with it. Granted, this deck makes it easy with how much synergy that it has within its card pool, but like throwing out the sigil on 2, and then playing the 2/2 that buffs your pirates when they attack on 3, and then location on 4, stuff like that. Like place like that are just so much fun to me. Just being able to like chain off these big combat turns, and then if you have the whenever a pirate attacks, give it +1/+1 the mook or whatever, and then there's the 2/2 pirate that gives you an attack every time a pirate attacks. There's just so much you can do with trying to manipulate the buffs in certain orders, and like with acupuncture being able to just throw 4 to 8 damage at them and yourself, but your life total doesn't matter. Like you do not care about that in this deck at all. You just go face, and that's the only place you go. It's been a lot of fun. Like there's been some unwinnable games for sure, but like just being able to get the big burst turns.
The deck doesn't have reload. The deck does not have reload, really. Like if I'm sure there's maybe versions that do, but like if you get to turn like 6 or 7 and they stabilize and they get down that taunt and this, you don't have Kane, you're just it's over. You're bottom right. Move on to the next game. You are there to win in the first few turns. Otherwise, you're probably not going to get there. All right. Oh, good.
I'm interested where the refinement lands because of that, because a lot of the builds right now, I feel like there's a ton of builds that you have your core 15, 16 cards of the pirates that are good, and then everyone's playing around with, do we play the priest cards? The deck that I was playing didn't play the tourist. It just ran more aggro, and I was running some more draw, but it's still, there's enough like 2 to 3 card combos in that deck that sometimes when you don't have the right cards together, it feels awkward. It has a lot of tokens, it has a lot of damage, but then it's not enough damage to quite get there fast enough. So I'm really interested where refinement takes that deck to balance all of those out. It's really strong now, but I do think it has a pretty high refinement ceiling to find, okay, this is definitely the build that balances all these different things that we need. Because draw is definitely something that's needed when you're playing a bunch of 1/1s and 2/2s tokens that you need other stuff to do with it.
Yeah, you need a little gas. And I want to remind everybody while we're talking about this, we've talked about Kiliax. We know that Kiliax probably needs a nudge. So outside of that, every day you log into Hearthstone over the next couple weeks, the top 2 or 3 decks are going to be different. The meta is not settled. People are constantly the meta is forming. So if you log into play and you keep running into that deck that you hate and it keeps beating you, don't panic. Don't shout to the heavens. Don't go on Reddit unless it's something you really like to do. Just, it's going to be different tomorrow. And it's going to be different the next day. And when you start seeing the same things over and over for like the next 3 or 4 days, then you get kind of a stable meta. But right now it's the Wild West and it's going to keep changing. And people are going to say, oh, I'm tired of losing to this, so let me figure out how to beat that. And then that's going to become the top deck and whatnot. So just remember to take a breath if you run into things that are really kind of driving you nuts. Outside of Kiliax, you can get that one out of there. But
I want to take a moment here
okay,
because I really liked what both Doc McBuck said and Pylet said. They touched on building an aggro deck. Seems really easy, and it always annoys me when people are like, "Oh, it's just a tribal aggro deck. This deck was figured out day one because you just search for the tribe and you put it all in there, and it doesn't require much skill." But what Doc said, like every mana crystal counts. Especially if you're trying to win by turn 5, you only have 15 mana crystals to win a game of Hearthstone. It is not a lot of mana, to do that. And so you need hyper efficient cards and finding those synergies. You don't have time to, be like, oh, maybe next turn I'll get it. You have to be like, all right, right now, what do I do? And you do have to plan like 3 turns ahead for, from turn 2, from turn 3. And then going on to what Pylet said, there is a lot of development. One of the cards that was nerfed that I think was a shame was Saddle Up, right? And Saddle Up just enabled a whole archetype because you could plan a little bit ahead, and then you had this kind of refresh of your board where it made it a little bit more sticky. and that was great. Aggro decks need a lot of that. It's not just, oh, I'm going to play another draw card, because you do have to take the mana and the time to rebuild the board. So anything that's kind of preloaded. So before Saddle Up, there was Composting and Druid for their little aggro decks, or was it Life Beyond Death was the one in Treant Druid? I think it cost 1, if it infused. And so, that allowed the deck to quickly rebuild. We'll see what happens with the pirate decks. If they just continue to go all in, or if they are able to find a good plan B.
Yeah, but Demon Hunter, all you got to do is stick a sock puppet on turn 1 and you win, right? No, I'm kidding. Actually, it was kind of funny because I was playing an aggro priest during theory crafting, and after my first game, Pylet's like, "What are you doing? Play this like an aggro deck." And then I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I played it like an aggro deck, and we won like the next 3 games. It was pretty funny. Well, so, you don't know what decks are. I'm like, oh, this sounds fun. And I'm like, why am I trading? Just send everything face and do all this. And it was a lot of fun. It was funny. All right. So speaking of cards and Hearthstone, what about Death Knight? WorldEight, what do you think? What do we got?
Why don't we have
Rainbow?
Pylet lead one of these times? Why is it always on me?
Well, because you're the one who wrote the book in the show notes, so we're going off your things here.
All right,
I could lead for you if I need to.
All right.
I'll lead these next 2 because I know that I've played more of the next class than probably anybody.
Thank you, Pylet.
I got you. So Death Knight, I have not played much, and I have not seen much, if at all. I'm trying to look through my replays, and I don't think I've seen one Death Knight, and I don't know what they were doing. I can see their deck list, and I don't know what they were doing. They beat me, but it's a lot of stuff. I think it's a Reno list. But Rainbow seems like the way that most people are going, just because since they've done the philosophy changes with runes of trying to make more 1 rune cards and give those options, now it's just you play Rainbow and take all the good cards and put them together. And there's a lot less of triple something or 2-in-1 going on. So Rainbow just kind of slotted in some of the new things. I'm interested they added some token type things. Those are the cards that I was trying in Warlock with the Death Rattle one that didn't work out, but maybe Death Knight has a better way to use them, being more focused on corpses. I know Corpsicle was a card that a lot of people were excited at, with the possibility of bringing back some burn into DK, but I haven't seen any, and I haven't heard much about it. So, but I also have been super busy.
The location is good. And these token decks with that location, with Corpsicle, I've seen a couple of them, and they still have Reska. There's a lot of potential there, and I think that you just got to get the right people focused on kind of finding the potential there, because the tools are there. I think we're going to be tired of Death Knight once they figure out the right build there. It's just my opinion, but all right. So Doc, what do you think?
I've only played against like 1 or 2 DKs, and I beat them both. I just Demon Hunter, go burr. It's the easiest way to put it. I just didn't give the Demon Hunter enough time to do Demon Hunter things, or Death Knight enough time to go Death Knight things. But one of them was Plagues. They played Helia and got all the plagues into my deck. So like they started to do like plague things, but it didn't matter in the end.
And we all still call Death Knight Demon Hunter half the time, right? Like we all do that when we're talking about it, because I think everyone I know still does that.
It's called the
right,
Arthas class. So what's Arthas up to?
What are your thoughts on Death Knight?
So I mean, some people are. It's like Excavate Rogue. You're seeing some holdouts with Rainbow DK. They got the handler, the Hound Handler. Forget the specific name, but it's a nice 2-drop, right? That's basically another Mining Casualties, which is great for any of the decks across the board. It seems to be a pretty like the Rainbow decks, the control-y ones haven't changed too much. And people who are comfortable with them seem to think that that's going to do well, and it seems to be doing all right, somewhere in tier 2, tier 3. But those decks could get a lot better as kind of control based, like adjusting to the meta. What seems more promising is because of all Ghouls Night Out, right? Like it's 5 corpses on top of the new handler, and so you have like just a ton of corpses, and so it's a lot easier to activate a Corpse Bride or an Army of the Dead. So we're starting to see this like hand lock type build coming out with more giants, and I think that's fun. I like seeing big giants and them landing and going thump, and when they hit face, it goes crash, like this huge noise, and it's very satisfying. So that's the type of deck that I would like to play. I'll probably play some of that. But it's so new, right? And that's one of those decks that we'll see where it lands. I do feel like that's a deck that gets under Ziliax. Like they do have to kind of find the answer right away. Otherwise you're taking 20 to the face and then you're dead. So, I think that has promise, and I'm excited for that type of deck. That's more my speed than the slow control-y ones.
I've seen Foamrender a bit more too, in like a Corpsicle type build, and I think there's a lot of interest in that. And you do bring up a point where there are some people that are still playing their Rainbow DKs, or some people that are still playing their Rogue Excavates and whatnot. Some people are free to play, and some people have only so much cards and dust that they can afford to spend, and they invested in the decks that they want to play. So if you see somebody, they're not necessarily the no fun police. They're just, that's what they have. So just kind of remember that. Like, not everyone is a whale like the rest of us, and, has all the cards and can build whatever deck. And if you need, we have the dust in the background. So just I don't think anybody that listens to our show is going to add somebody and make fun of them for playing an old deck or something like that. But if you are, don't. So, speaking of decks in rough shape, just kidding. But how is Mage there, Pylet?
So a little pull back the curtain behind the scenes. I've really enjoyed looking at WorldEight's right up here, because all the decks that I've been playing and be like, yeah, this is exciting, I can have some fun with this. All of those WorldEight is like, this is in rough shape, this is no good, this is awful, and shows that we are definitely on both ends of the spectrum here. And I feel that every time that I've looked at decks of his and tried decks and bouncing back and forth, it just shows there's all types of players. Mage, I think, is going to take some time to figure out. I've been trying out a couple different builds. I've personally been trying out a little bit with the tourist that I cannot remember the name of off the top of my head, Rayla. I went for a build using Sif at the top end. That way, try to go tempo in the early game, and then have Sif if we needed to later on. It worked okay. I had one game where I mentioned that I lucked into a win against a warrior. I rolled the spells cost 1 less off of Elemental Companion on turn 10, so I could play Sif with it, and had 3 chalices in my hand that had all the casts left, and I won. That was a lot of damage. Then I had the very next game, I won on turn 5 because I played Rayla and just built a board of Divine Shields that they couldn't deal with. So I think there's potential there with something in that realm, but it needs enough clears that you need to figure out what those final card slots are. Do I need something for wide? Do I need something like Reverb to take care of tall minions? Where do we need to go? What I think has a little bit more promise is a Spell Mage. There is already a little bit of play with that, with the burn version from last set, focusing on no minions. You play the Manufacturing Air, the 5 cost draw spell that then reduces all of them by 3 if you don't have minions. You can play the new location in that deck, and that is very, very good, because it kind of fills out those cards that you might not want to run in your deck, but works for certain matchups. And then we added a lot more cheat burn with the drink. We added more clears with Rising Tides, is I think the name of the card, that deals 2 and then deals 2 more if nothing dies, which is a really interesting card. I'm hopeful to play around with that. I actually played one more game of that before we started recording and OTK'd a Treant Druid, where I had enough of the malfunctions to clear a board to not die, and then had enough spell damage to deal 30 on like turn 5 or turn 6 and get there. So I'm hopeful there's something there, but we'll see. Big Spell Mage, I have a couple loaded up, but that's always been a deck that everyone wants to try to make and then never actually seems to work until it's too good.
I've seen it a bunch. I more non-zero. I've definitely seen it a few times, and it's been interesting. And I saw them play Protection Orb into after I renoed them with my warrior, and they were sad when their minion, the one minion they got was from the deal 6 damage, get a 6-mana minion, the that old card, and then their Tsunami did nothing because there were no board spaces for the Tsunami. But and this is a little side, we're not getting to Druid yet, but Seabreeze Chalice, that's the mage one, right?
Yes.
I lost to a Druid that I had down to 1 health. And I was more than 30. I was at like 45. And they played 9, 10, 11, 12 Seabreeze Chalices on the same turn. 12.
That card is very good.
That card is very, very good.
Like,
all right.
When spell damage mage was a thing, we ran Mask of Cthulhu, which was 10 pings for 7 mana without spell damage. This without spell damage is 6 for 3 mana, and any spell damage just adds to it. I've done a lot of, well, with the Sith version, that's 8 pings for 1 mana without any discounts. It's very, very good card.
Well, the card that you need is Concierge, right? Because that's the card that really kind of enables some wacky stuff with this. Because then it's
Druid,
free.
Yes.
So, Doc, you seen any mage? Played any mage?
I think I've played one. Yeah, I've played one. I forget the specific win turn. Sorry, my frogs are croaking right now, so if that comes through my mic, I apologize on the recording. But they're really croaking. Oh my goodness, sorry about that. Yeah, but I made them have to choose between either trading a minion or having to hero power something. And them having to hero power something meant that they couldn't play another thing, and so just let me like rebuild on like turn 4. So like not much rebuilding, but like made me establish a board again and then kill them like a turn later. Like I never felt out of that game. I felt very much in control, and so I let them make the choice instead of making the choice for them. So I just pushed face instead of trading into minions, because that's what you do. You just go face because it's the place. And yeah, I mean, I want to play mage. Edelweiss has a very fun looking mage that she's been working on. But yeah, I just haven't got around to it.
WorldEight?
Well, I hope maybe we can, Pylet and I can do some collaboration, because I don't think I've seen a mage list that I like. Like as someone that enjoys deck building, like I've seen a lot of Theorycraft lists, and I'm like, I would change probably 8 to 10 cards here. Like I think these are terrible choices. So, the meta right out of the gate is not being kind to these decks. And I'm going on Donkey's site here, and I'm looking at some decks from a very specific other site that some people just kind of net deck from, and I'm getting some confirmation here that the cards that I thought were going to be awful in the deck are indeed awful, and probably pulling the deck down quite a bit. Because I'm really excited to find a good Rayla deck. I think that's such an interesting card, especially with the Concierge into 0 mana, on sunscreens. I think there's a lot of potential there. But you do have to figure that deck out. The idea of having a late game Sif is kind of exciting. You can kind of weave in, your flame geysers and stuff like that, and then at the end of the game, maybe have the that's how you finish them after applying some pressure. Because to win with a Sif when they're at 10 health is a lot easier than to try and OTK them for 30, right? I think the other thing is like Tsunami is an absolutely insane card. And I don't know why people aren't playing that in Burn Mage. It's like, okay, it costs 8, but every once in a while you're going to hit that off a manufacturing error, and that's just going to end the game, because you're going to play that on 6. Or maybe you play it on 8, like the game goes that long, because all the water elementals can go face. So, but no one's trying it, right? And I'm not sure why, but it seems more promising to me than Frostbolt, so give it a shot, right? Big spell mage, it again, coming from like someone who I not only do I like building decks, but part of that is like I look at the history of decks and archetypes and things like that. Blizzard Team 5 tried to push big spell mage back in Stormwind. They had all these weapons that weren't really weapons. So we kind of remember the Warlock one pretty well, even though I can't remember the name of it, that discounted your whole hand, and then people could play this bomb Warlock because it did all these crazy discounts. But they also had one for Mage called Celestial Inkset, which is like if you spend 5 mana, discount a spell, and Belinda came out, and Belinda was, draw 2 spells, swap her stats with the spell's cost. So there was this push. But it didn't quite reach critical mass until Sunken City, actually, because that's when we got Barbaric Sorceress, and that kind of changed it. The whole build was all of a sudden very much about getting to turn 6 and then pivoting to your game plan, and it kind of played more like a control deck at the time. A lot of pieces came together. It seems like they pushed the theme pretty hard here, but it's just not quite there yet, which doesn't mean we should give up on it. We have a year and a half left with this support for this archetype. So a lot of time to breathe, but the moment does not seem to be right now. But I do have some hope for Mage. I think hopefully some players will just be a little bit more bold with what they're trying to accomplish, and hopefully we'll see something interesting.
I think Millhouse rotates out this year. I know he's not played. I just wish he was. And if you really want to work on these major decks with Pylet, you can find me and Pylet most nights 9 to 12 Eastern Standard Time on Tito Santana HS. So just show up and say, hey, can we play some Mage? And if there's nothing else going on, we can play some Mage. But
sorry to interject. I did see a big Spell Mage deck that I loaded in but haven't played yet. That was on, I think it got put on the off curve sheet, where it ran a lot of minions just to keep fighting for board and to do a little bit of discovering, but they all have enough stuff with them that you can justify playing them, except for maybe a couple of them, and then kind of build yourself up to Surflipod, Under the Sea, Tsunami, Sunset Valley. And it only runs a few spells. It doesn't run the orb, actually. So I was interested in seeing if something like that works out, because that's a lot more like what we played when we did the Belinda version. You ran those 4 really good big spells, and then you just figured out the rest of the game plan and ran enough stats to get there. So I'm interested to try that. I think that might end up having more promise than a deck that runs smaller spells that you use just to get there, and then hope that you hit the big spells off of the draw that you need to. Interested to see how this works.
And I think you brought up a good point, WorldEight, like Belinda. Like I think the reason why the current big spell mage isn't really taking hold and being things is I think we don't have a payoff card like Belinda. You have the big spells, but there's nothing like Belinda used to get you like that 10-10 or whatever like that on turn 5, and that's not here. And I think that's what we're missing. And I kind of wish they were a little bolder with the core set and would change it around a little bit more and say, okay, hey, we're giving you guys big spell mage support or whatever the archetype they're trying to push in a class. And there's not quite enough there, but there's something in the past that could help. And I would love to see them maybe try to reintroduce these things. And if it gets too strong, you just say, we're going to put that one back out of core or something like that. Like there's free cards there that they can be playing with. So I would love to see something like that. But I don't think we will, at least not yet. Well, let's move on to Shaman. Doc, have you seen any Shaman in your Demon Hunter escapades?
Not. I do want to play it. I do like Shaman. I do like aggro Shaman. But I just haven't got around to it. Just having fun playing a class that I normally don't have fun playing. So I'm going to play that till I don't enjoy it anymore.
All right, WorldEight. Anything on Shaman?
Yeah, a few things. Shaman is the other pirate class with some very aggressive strategies there. So Doc, you might actually find some comfort there. It's a lot of the same some cards because the shamans are touristing into DH. So the lists look pretty similar. Obviously some variations, but that's also one of the best performing decks in the format. Just pure aggro pushing, and so that shows a lot of promise early on. There's also what's starting to be called Bonk Shaman, which is using like Horn of the Windlord and some of the attack buffs. So your ideal situation is to have a Horn up, and then you do a Turn the Tides. Okay, now your weapon's at 6. And then you use the new Demon Hunter card, which steals up to 4 attack from a minion, and use that with conductivity. And that could give you up to another 12, right? So that's all of a sudden we're at 18 attack with Wind Fury, and that'll kill him. And so, relying really heavily on the Horn to take you home. But that's turn 7. There's a card, the Headliner, I'm not going to say it correctly, but it does all these
Cabaret
spell school
Headliner?
discounts. Yes, Cabaret Headliner. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It does all these spell school discounts, and all those pieces are different spell schools. So you can line it up, and I don't know if you can do it on turn 6. Maybe if you had like a coin from a greedy partner or something, if you need that. But that shows a lot of promise too. Just hit him in the face twice, really hard each time. And then I because I'm involved with like deck building, and I go on Discord, and I poke my nose into other people's decks. Well, the other thing is that people pass a lot of decks to me, and a lot of people are really excited for a Wave of Nostalgia package. I'm not sure why. I think it's mostly because you play Hagatha and justify it with Frosty Decor, which is an incredible curve. And then there's just like a lot more support pieces that you can kind of pepper in around that. So that's another package. And then there's also this like Insidious package where you Shutter Walk and you shuffle like a ton of the little, I forget what it is, but it does 2 damage to everything, right? You could shuffle 15 into the deck. Then you basically gas like Geekkeeper to pull them all out in one turn. And OTK, I saw, Megasa from Coin Conceit. I was specking her against Jay Alexander, and she did it to him, and she got like 40 damage against him. And I wasn't watching his stream, but I just imagine he was not happy about it listening to that particular combo. So there are some options in Shaman from all kinds of places. So it looks promising for the class, even though it's kind of low play rate right now. Could be interesting.
Well, I don't think Jay Alexander is ever happy. So, I think that reaction is going to happen no matter what. And by the way, Megasa will be on this show on Sunday. So, looking forward to that. And I think I understand the appeal of the nostalgia, because if you're playing like the Demon Hunter cards and you're playing the tokens and the pirates, it seems almost natural where like in Demon Hunter, where you're running out of steam, to have that ability to say, all these 1/1s, you're going to, everything's now random legendaries, and maybe I get something out of that. So I can kind of see that. But one thing, you were talking about the Wind Fury, you were talking about the Paladin Shaman Wind Fury weapon, Horn of the Windlord. Like, that made me we didn't talk about Weapon Rogue, I don't think. And I've seen a bit of Weapon Rogue, and they got that weapon that's like, that keeps buffing up every time you play a card from another class. And they have like, they get up to like 15, 17, and it has lifesteal. So no matter what you do something, they come back, they just heal up and don't lose anything. And that's actually out there. So I don't know how good it is, but I've seen it. more than I think the other decks. I don't know why I forgot about that. So I haven't seen a lot of Viper either. So I'm wondering if we're going to start seeing more Viper again pretty soon.
Well, the answer to that is Unchiliax just kind of solos the Cutlass deck, right? Like you can't punch through it maybe once, twice, but then they bring it back 3 times and it's kind of over. So even though that deck got support, so it's kind of the buzz kill for all these decks, right? That's the other appeal of the nostalgia, right? Is that you can just you evolve the Unchiliax and it can't come back once it's transformed.
If it hasn't already been brought back at least once. Pylet, any shaman thoughts?
Yeah, I've played a little bit of most of the decks that WorldEight was talking about. I loaded them in today, a couple different versions of the aggro bonk shaman. One was the Pheno list. That's what I was playing when we played each other earlier, and I didn't draw any cheap minions, so I just got run over by his paladin deck. But the other game was against a warlock that I played, and I got to do the Horn of the Windlord into then the next turn the tide skirting death, and they died. So there's something there. I'm interested where the early game goes, because I also grabbed Endymions, which leans a lot more into the pirate package, and it's interesting to see which one's going to end up performing better. I played a couple games with the Evolve, and to answer the Wave of Nostalgia question, people play it because it's just a goofy, fun card. And now that most of the things that we're playing in that deck to evolve are 1/1s because of the pirates with charge that you get to attack and then transform them. Murloc Grofin, all these little cards and minions that you don't care about. When you have 5 of them on board and your opponent only has 1, you don't care what comes out of the Wave of Nostalgia. You're just getting 5 random minions that are going to be bigger than 1/1s. So the one that I grabbed also runs a couple giants. It runs Sea Giant since we go wide. It runs Seaside Giant because we run both locations, Muck Pools and Fairy Tale Forest. I didn't get a chance to do much with those, but I did get to Giant into Muck Pools, which always gets you the Plague payoff card that I can't remember the name of now. Guardian. That has Russian Reborn. That is nice when you need to come back. You can get a cheap Giant, and then it's still an 8 attack thing if it doesn't die. So there's some things there. It's figuring out what's going to work early game, but I do think that there's promise with the Wind Fury. We also still have the Sandar Elemental, so if you don't, that way you don't have to lean only into the Horn of the Windlord. You can place. I haven't seen a list yet that runs both that and Sandar Elemental as kind of a second option for getting the mini to give your hero 1 attack and Wind Fury, and then going in. I'm interested in that, and interested if that ends up performing as well, worse, better than the Horn of the Windlord.
And there's been several times I've sent Pylet a screenshot of a board state, and he's, how the heck did that? Oh, Wave of Nostalgia, got it. So it's been kind of fun. I think Shaman's interesting. I think, like I said, a lot of these decks are a little more complicated to figure out early on. Some of them are a little more linear. Some of them, even if they may be challenging to play or not, whatnot, they're going to get there. So I'm going to start with Paladin. We're moving on to Paladin here. I haven't played a lot of Paladin. I played 3 of the Lanessa deck, which apparently hasn't been that good. And then I got off of it. Then at the end of last night's stream, or the stream before, no, last night, because last night was Tuesday, I'm trying to make, and I'm interested in WorldEight's take on this. I want to make a boogie down list that has amalgams and buffs. So that way, a lot of times boogie down used to be kind of dead in your hand if you ran out of 1-drops. In this case, you can use it to pull out amalgams again that will now have all these buffs on it, and have a small kind of lower to the ground aggro focus kind of Paladin. But I specifically have stayed away from Paladin because I know once I start playing Paladin a little bit more, I'll probably play a lot of it. And I can't wait to play Sandcastle in the buff Paladin and see how that goes. But if I do that, I'm just going to miss out on a lot of these other things. So we'll see how that goes. But so Doc, have you seen any Paladins?
I mean, I've played Paladin a little bit. I've played WorldEight's Paladin list, and I've played the Alkali Lake Lanessa Paladin. I do think that your list, WorldEight, is my favorite of the two. It's just more fun, I think. Like, I need to play more with it. Most of my games this expansion have been with Demon Hunter. I've played like 3 games with your Paladin list, but that's been since before you've said or changed anything within the Coin Concede Discord. So I need to go through that and read your thoughts about it, and then see if that'll help me feel better about it. Because not that I feel bad, just the amount of enjoyment I get with how the Demon Hunter behaves is just really high. So I enjoy playing that kind of aggro a lot, but I also do enjoy playing Paladin, because Paladin was one of my main classes for a very, very long time. So I just enjoy playing any kind of aggressive Paladin. So if you don't have WorldEight's lists, go find it.
I mean, I hear Paladin's boring, so I mean, I understand that not everyone's kind of getting into it. WorldEight, what do you think, Paladin?
Paladin's in a good spot. They got a good set. The older archetypes performing really well. I mean, just to put that aside, Hand Buff is probably one of the best decks in the game, and you can put in Sandcastle, or I think Tito made an excellent point. Some people don't have much of a Hearthstone budget. You can just keep playing the same list you were playing a week ago and do really well. As far as the stat size are concerned, it's like the second best deck on the Climb to Legend, just the old list. And the best deck is actually Flood Paladin with no new cards. So if you liked Paladin a week ago, you could still enjoy it today.
But that also comes in with the fact that people have been, not only is it a good deck, but they have experience playing it. So people are still trying to figure out how to play these new decks, and you're like, this is the deck I've been playing for the last 3 months. And you know all the situations that you can deal with and all that. So I think that plays a lot into it too.
No, that's a good point. But in terms of Flood Paladin, Prismatic Beam just kind of farms a lot of these pirate decks, right? It's just a showdown Prismatic Beam turn, and the game's over for the other aggro deck, because you follow it up with like a flash sale, and it's so hard to come back from that. And with Hand Buff, the plushie is just a ton of life gain. Like you just, it's hard to push through that. And so those situations haven't changed at all. But I've been playing it like a ton of Hand Buff over the last few months. It was really good, and it just kind of clicked with me. Played kind of similar to Enraged Warrior, where there was a lot of charge damage, there's a lot of snowballing. Those are the kind of things that really appealed to me about Enraged when it was still kind of competitive. So I played a lot of Hand Buff, and but for this expansion, I kind of looked at well, before I want to go into that, there was a lot of talk about this holy OTK build with Lanessa that focused on glow sticks and O Manager, and looked, one of those theory crafting decks that looked really good, right? Like it was going to kill you on 6-7 if you weren't careful. And that's just not performing. I think that's for a few reasons. You need to be more defensive than theory crafting. The pirates are here, right? And they're going to run you over unless you pull out the defensive tools. And for combo decks, you kind of have to balance, drawing your combo and not dying. And that deck doesn't really, right now, do that balance very well, because you have to play a 3/4 on 4 that you hope dies. And hopefully you don't die by playing a 3/4 on 4 against an aggressive deck. But the build that I've been running that has been kind of alluded to is a build that's focused on playing a lot of cheap holy spells in order to discount Glowbots and the new 10 cost spell, the Shanty. So there's this kind of like inevitability of this deck is going to do something really powerful, but right off the bat, it's got slither spears and protectors on the front end, and the sunscreen is a Naga, it's a serpent wake. And I loved Naga Priest. So I saw Serpent Wake, honored here. And I'm like, I'm going to build this deck. I'm going to play it. And it's been doing really well for me. And there's something special about building a deck from scratch and seeing it work and continue to work. And then other people give you feedback like, well, this worked for me too. Like that's probably one of the most satisfying Hearthstone experiences for me is when people are like, yeah, I enjoyed your deck. It's, thanks for sharing it. That means a lot to me. And that's, I build decks to enjoy myself, but, getting that positive feedback really encourages me. So
yeah, it must be really, really rough too, to have your deck shouted out on the premier Hearthstone podcast, the Queen Concede, every week. Oh, and this is another WorldEight deck.
You know what? You could lay into me a little bit, but I work hard on my decks. Like I spend a lot of mental effort on these things. Way too much mental effort on considering like, hey, do I play Prison Breaker in this Paladin deck? Like, try to be creative with it and things like that. Because in this particular deck, Prison Breaker comes down on curve and would clear all the pirate decks. It's a serious consideration I'm having right now, but you have to balance that with a lot of other choices. And I believe we did an episode about deck building, maybe not, but it's fun. And so one of the parts with deck building is you have a concept, you fill it out, and then you actually got to take it to the ladder and see what it does. And so I'm at a phase right now with this deck where it's experimentation. Like I feel very confident in the majority of the deck, and I have to listen to it. I have to listen to what works, what doesn't. Like a card like Grill Master seems like an obvious inclusion, but it felt awful, and I pulled it out, and I haven't missed it. So it's kind of an exciting time with deck building, and we'll see where this one goes. But Paladin overall in a really good spot. Probably one of the best decks to climb to Legend with if you're not feeling Pain Warlock or one of the pirate decks. It's also a very good option.
It's sounding a lot like it has a bit of a Garden's Grace type feel to it too, with the cheap holy spells.
Yeah, I described it earlier as a little bit of Naga Priest meets Garden's Grace Paladin. It's kind of like those are its cousins. So if you liked either of those decks, you might find familiarity here.
Now, what about I can't believe I forget her name. The card that's in core that brings back all the spells that you've cast on minions. This
Liadrin. It's actually Liadrin's actually a card. She costs 7 mana. This deck surprised me with how fast it was. I think Pylet can attest to that.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. It was. I started playing it and I'm like, well, Globot is like free on like 2 all the time. And I've got a 5/5 out, and all of a sudden I've got a giant out on 4 along with a whole bunch of pirates. Like they're dead way before like turn 8. It just snowballs really quickly, especially when you're playing Slither Spear and you have this endless supply of Naga Wigs or Serpent Wigs that you don't have to do much for. You just play 1 aura and you get 3 Serpent Wings out of it. And that Slither Spear with a Divine Shield on it, it hits hard really fast. So it's a good idea for sure to think of Liadrin, but
not this
might
deck.
Be too slow. It might be too slow for this deck. This deck is surprisingly fast.
Pilot, thoughts? Aside from that, it went too fast for your shaman.
Yeah. Paladin, and it has a lot of cards that are very obvious and very strong. I'm excited to see where a few of the cards end up. Grill Master, I know, is a little bit slower, being a 4 mana 3/4, but targeted draw 2 is really, really good, and that's going to be very good at some point. There's a couple cards that feel a little bit awkward, but we'll see where they fit in. I think Service Ace eventually has potential, because I didn't realize until later on that Service Ace says after this minion gains attack, reduce the cost of your highest cost card in your hand. I thought that was spell, because that's what they normally do. And that says card, which gives you a lot more opportunities to use it in whatever. One thing that I want to point out, because I overlooked it, and I know a lot of people have with Sandcastle, Rush, after this attack's turned into a location, whatever the numbers are for attack and health, that's what the location is. So the location then is give another minion, it says give a friendly minion +3 attack and rush. That +3 is whatever the attack is on Sandcastle. So I think that slots into hand buff really easily, because then that's a lot of damage on stuff that you already have on board, and that's normally going to be charge damage because you're buffing something that you already have, or you're using it on a charge minion, and that's very, very quick and easy extra burn that you can throw in. So I know that's a card that people, I think, kind of slept on because they just see that and they see the location and expect, oh, that's what the number is. It's not. It's whatever the attack ends up being, which we've learned can be a lot.
Yeah, and I didn't sleep on that card. I've been very excited about that card. I haven't played a lot of it yet because, I know I'm holding on to it. But, yeah. And in Theory Crafting, we did the pirate thing where we had the South Sea deckhand buffed up and we played the Wind Fury on it and finished them off. But I think one thing that's interesting to note here is, so Glowbot and Glowstick were mini set cards, right? And they people couldn't find a home for them in the mini set, but they were basically kind of like, oh, we need to fit 12 cards for Paladin, so let's give a couple in the mini set now. So sometimes if you see a card in the mini set that doesn't make sense, it's probably a setup for something in the future. So just something to think about. All right, so Druid. Pylet, why don't you start off here? What are your thoughts on Druid?
On the slots, Druid is what tilted me almost out of the game last night when I was playing. I jumped into a chat with Tito because I needed to talk to somebody, or else I was going to lose my mind. And it's what we talked about earlier. It's, Druid and Warrior are both kind of abusing the same thing with Unkiliacs and Hydration Station, just getting there in different ways. Warrior is trying to either cheat it out or survive there. Druid is just playing a bunch of ramp because they got a lot of really strong ramp this set, and it gave them options. We saw the ramp Druid at the end of the expansion really take off, using a few of the dragons, ramping into Marin and Unkiliacs, and just overwhelming the opponent when they had 8 mana and the opponent was on 4, and you can't do anything against what they're doing. Now they have that option. They have using the new spells, Trail Mix or the New Heights. I just had it up and I put it away. That give them a little bit of ramp. They have a lot of higher cost cards and kind of push that direction more than aggro. I have actually seen, I mentioned I played against the Treant Druid. I've heard a couple people now talk about it. So they didn't get any support for that in the Druid set specifically, but a lot of times early expansion aggro kind of shines because they're trying to beat up on a lot of the experimentation. So that's a very easy deck to kind of go to and just overwhelm them with 2/2 trees.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I think we know why they rotated Nourish and Wild Growth, because there's more than enough options here. WorldEight, how about Druid? What do you think?
Well, it's interesting to bring up Nourish, because in the notes when they rotated it, they said, well, we don't want to focus on ramp for Druid this year. We want to find some other identities. It's in the dev notes, and then they print some cards. Not only do they print ramp cards, they're like, if you have 10 mana crystals, we have more than one of those cards right now. They care about you having 10 plus mana crystals. So, Druid had a very strong, probably the strongest deck going into the expansion, and then it got more support. Some pretty important cards like Dozing Dragon and Sleep Under the Stars are really just terrific cards for these ramping strategies. And so much so that you can even play ramp without the dragons. Both are very strong decks. And again, frustrating because they ramp into these defensive tools fairly quickly. They stall just long enough on the aggro side to get to their Unkiliacs or their Yogg, and then just overwhelm with value and things like that, and do very well against slower strategies because they steal all your mana crystals and then put some pressure on. So it's a frustrating deck to play against. I think the numbers on it went a little bit down. They were kind of out of control going into the expansion. We'll see. Those numbers might pop up again because it's still a strong deck. Really, I would say straightforward to play. You kind of play what you have on curve. And then the end game can get a little bit more complicated, but not terribly so. It's approachable. We'll call it that. It's an approachable deck. And as for other druid strategies, where there's ramp, there's traditionally an aggro druid, like Pylet said. The challenge with aggro druid is it's kind of getting run over by better aggro strategies like pirates. And like I mentioned, the showdown paladin just kind of clears the trees easily. So the last one of note is probably that spell damage druid, which was alluded to before, which relies on the concierge to make the mage spell 0. And doing that can, you play go with the flow on the concierge, you do that twice, and then you have almost endless chalices if you're playing with the pupil and your timing is right. So you do these big swipes, and you have your dollhouses, and each chalice is starting to do like 5 damage a pop, and you cast it. I think, Tito, what'd you say, 12 times? Something like that. That's a lot of damage. So that was like a theory crafting, looked, terrifying. And then when it got up against pirates, it kind of said, oh, oops, I can't just, get away with this without getting run over. But with some adjustment to an aggressive start, I think it might be okay. I kind of, made fun of you, Tito, when we were doing the talk about rising tides, but this is, you said it was super strong. I was like, I don't know, but it looks probably really good in this deck just to stem the pirates and, keep the board under control. But Druid's in a really strong spot, probably got one of the best expansion sets. In addition to helping Warrior out with all the ramp. So it's something to, obviously keep an eye on. And if we get a bounce patch in 2 weeks, I assume some numbers will be nudged. I think it's a pretty safe assumption.
Why did they have Warrior, Taurus, into Druid? I don't know. We could have made him go into Mage or something, or something that would have been not necessarily as powerful. And so I think we all know Kiliax is going to eventually get nudged, otherwise the people will riot. I wonder if we'll see some beetles at that point when Kiliax isn't the best thing to do, because now it's easy to get over 11 mana. So
Beetle's gone, isn't it?
Oh, was it gone? I
yeah,
thought we
Death
still
Beetle
had it.
Rotated.
Oh, well then I guess in Wild maybe you'll see some Death Beetle. I don't know. I thought it was still here. Crap. I was like, why aren't we talking about it? I would
Wild.
like to see...
You don't even want to know what's going on in Wild right now. With Pupil and Bran and Shadow Step and Mailbox Dancer, there's literally infinite mana. That combo's infinite mana, and it's tutorable, and you could do it on turn 2. It is just absolutely gross. I've seen, 100 Edwins on turn 3. Daggers, 32 for daggers on turn 3 as well. Just Wild is a silly place. You might want to stay away for a little bit.
It's like Camelot in Holy Grail. It's a silly place. Let's not go there. I would like to see, as far as, again, I'm not calling for nerfs, but if they were to nerf something else in Druid, I would like to see them take Swipe out of Malfurion's Gift, because they do not need 4 swipes. They don't. They really don't. But that's just, my thoughts. How about Priest? And Doc, I know you've played some aggro Pirate. I think next week we'll see you with a pirate hat and a patch over your eye. But how about Priest? You seen any Priests?
I have not played against a single Priest. It could just be that the playstyle for it versus where my MMR is at from being decayed for a few months. It just could just be a game plan that's just not what people are wanting to do where I'm at because it's a little bit more involved. Yeah, no priest, and if there is some like shadow or aggro priest, I'll try it, but any control priest, absolutely not.
I mostly have seen out of everything. I mean, I've seen a couple control priests, but I've seen overheal priest, and that's been actually not so bad. It can be tough to deal with. I don't think there's a whole lot of new stuff in it, but I could be wrong because it looks like the same kind of deck, but it's been pretty strong. I am interested. I see your notes here, WorldEight, that the aggro package doesn't attract much attention. That was one of the decks I had the most fun with at Theory Crafting, is on my list to get to. So while I see that you're saying it's not getting much attention, is it good?
So Zarimi is good. No one cares, right?
Nagisa cares.
Yeah, there's like, if you care, you probably listen to the Coin Conceit podcast, because they love it over there. And it was actually one of the first few decks that I queued up, and it felt great. To be honest, the new Cheese Dragon slots right into that deck, and it needed some burn from hand, and so you can get that. It might take a little bit of time to figure out, because a deck that doesn't see a lot of play doesn't get a lot of stats on it. So you can kind of be scratching your head for a while, being like, well, this feels kind of good, but I'm not sure. And if there's not a lot of players playing it, you might be scratching your head the whole expansion, until you've put in 100, 200 games yourself. But so Zarimi looks fine. The challenge with like a more control priest. I want to again kind of touch on my point from before with aggro, that no one's really trying like ignore Zarimi. Let's just do like pirate priest, which I think could be really good. It's one of the best decks in Wild. Well, ignoring the Edwin thing, but like pirate aggro priest is a top tier deck, and now we've got all these good pirates. We've got tons of burn from hand. I haven't seen a single list like that, so I might cook something up. That's not just Zarimi. But the challenge with Control Priest right now is it doesn't know. It had this challenge going into the expansion. It doesn't know what to play to adjust for a lot of different strategies. It just kind of loses to everything. And it's not going to look, especially if Lamplighter gets popular, it has no answer to that. It's just going to die on 8. You could try and dirty rep, but that deck's full of garbage elementals. Like your chance of actually hitting the Sonya or the Lamplighter is kind of low. So it might just disappear for a while until, something else pops up.
You dirty rat, and then you do it in Rogue. You dirty rat in Rogue, and then you flick it, and you're all set.
Right before the game, right before we did the podcast, I did lose to an overheal priest. So they were using the fishing rod from Hunter to tutor out their clergies, which I thought was really clever, which allowed them to have a double clergy, double funnel cake start, which is a really good start for overheal priest. And I just got walloped because that deck is still pretty good, and if you can tutor out your best card, that's a good thing too.
That's fair. I'm looking forward to playing some aggro priest, even if it's not good, because it was super fun. It was nice to get the prophecies or whatever they're called, the fortunes, and top deck acupuncture and just throw 3 acupunctures at them for instant 12 damage and finish them off. That felt really, really nice when that kind of works out. Pylet, how are you feeling about priest?
I haven't played it, and I've only played against it twice. One of them only played 3 different cards before they lost, so that might kind of say a lot of where it's at. Zarimi's very good still. Like WorldEight said, nobody's playing it. Once it got nerfed once or twice before, people just bounced off of it and never really gave it another shot. It's still really good, and it got some really good tools this set that you can fill in and kind of take out some of those cards that were a little bit on the fence before or got nerfed. The dragon, the cheese dragon, is very good because, as has been mentioned, leading up to the expansion, you can play that and the Zurimi on that turn, and then you have a bunch of big minions that are going face with the extra turn. I do think once things settle, I think that there's a chance for some of these cards that fit more of a control priest to kind of find their way in. There's a couple of them that seem like they slot into some of those awkward places in like a Reno list, either just filling out, spots in the curve or filling out spots that, were bad cards that have some potential for control, but I'm not a control player. I'm not much of a control priest player for sure. But some of these cards, like the sensory deprivation that summons a copy of an enemy minion, and if you have 20 or less health, destroy the original. There's a resurrect card. There's the one that gives you the copies of the fortunes that are a copy of the top card of your deck. Those things seem like things that once a control priest gets figured out, I'm not going to like playing against them. I'm already going to be angry at these cards next year. I can already feel it. So we'll see. We'll see where that ends up. But speaking of Hunter, this is kind of distracting. Did we skip over Hunter?
We did, but I was going to quietly just make that our last class. But since we're talking about it,
I was just making sure that I didn't like zone out during it or something.
No, but why don't you start us off on Hunter?
Yeah. Hunter is another one that is in a weird spot because it got a really interesting set and not necessarily in a good way. It has a set where none of the cards overly made a ton of sense in what was already there. There's decent cards there, but it feels like we got the repeat things, we got the battle cry stuff, but none of it's like, oh yeah, that definitely slots in, other than the fishing rod pulling 1-drops, catch of the day just being a 1-mana 3/3 with rush. But there wasn't a lot that I think, at least to me, stood out as, oh yeah, this is something that we do on day one. I think that there's potential there. I was playing a little bit of a Beast Hunter, the adaptive amalgam, with enough other stuff to make it work when you didn't just have the amalgam. So yes, the main goal is to magnetize and just make a really big amalgam that you're pulling with the fishing rod. And I had plenty of times where I would fishing rod on 3, pull the amalgam on 4 with a camouflage mount, and then when it died, pull it again and throw a buffed magnetized taunt and magnetized rush on it. And now here's 11, 12 that's going to keep coming back. So is that going to be good? Probably not on its own, but I think that there's something that will eventually be there once the cool new card effect wears off and people start figuring out what else we do. Big Beast, I think, will eventually find a way with some of the cards that got added into the deck, but some of them I don't know where they're going to end up going with it, like Sasquatch and the Macaw. Those will be interesting cards to figure out later on.
Well, speaking of interesting to figure out, Pylet, for the future, remember amalgam with maybe like the buff mech rogue that we the mech rogue that could be potentially interesting, but also the buff mech paladin that we've tried to kind of make work. Having the amalgam in that could be good, because you think about it, in rogue you play that and then you can maybe pit stop, get it back, and then you get a cheaper buffed up version with all the magnetize and all that. In paladin you get the hands on and stuff. There's a lot of stuff. See, a lot of stuff people aren't even talking about yet, because the easy stuff is, or the more interesting stuff is what people are kind of figuring out now, and then it's the fringe stuff that people start to figure out later on. So before we move on to other people, for my thoughts, I haven't seen much Hunter, and I've rolled over I think most of it with when I've been playing aggro, but I did ask. So we know a friend of the show, Just a Guy, knows a few devs, and before Theorycraft, and I was like, hey, so. And you got any inside dev information for me? And I don't think they listen, so it's not going to matter. One thing they said was Pet Parrot with Carry On Grub is interesting, because Pet Parrot is a 2-mana 1/1 battle cry. Repeat the last 1-card course you play. And Carry On Grub is a battle cry. Get a 1-course suitcase. Pack the top 2 cards of your deck into it. And if you happen to get a parrot in that, then you can potentially have infinite suitcases with whatever that other card is. Not sure what you do with that, but that's got some potential. And then I also said, hey, just I'm not looking for decks, but are there archetypes I should be trying to play based on, like, play testing or anything like that? And I was told, these are the 3 decks I was told. Greedy Rogue with Marin, Tess, and Eudora. I don't think we've seen that. Aggro Warlock using Death Knight cards. We talked about that. That hasn't really taken off either. And Taunt Warrior, which, I mean, kind of with Ziliax, but so out of those, it's interesting what comes out of playtesting and what people figure out on the first day, right? Doc, you seen much Hunter?
Not a single one. Yeah, just haven't ran into them. So they're out there. They're sneaky because they're trying to find their prey, right? So we can't see them. But I think they're in the wrong forest or something, because this one ain't it.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of big beasts, and it kind of brings up the question, why don't you ever see elephants hiding in trees?
Yeah.
It's because they're so damn good at it. Anyway, WorldEight. What do you think about Hunter?
I have not seen a single Hunter. If you look at stats, like Secret Hunter is still doing the same thing it was doing before, and it seems fine. No one cares. There are some dedicated Hunter mains out there. Someone asked me, what do you think is a good Hunter deck? And I kind of scratched my head. I didn't really understand the expansions Hunter at all. So, I was like, maybe there's a big beast here I with all you can eat and stuff like that. But I wasn't seeing the vision. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go on Ron Mexico's stream day 1, see what he's playing. He usually likes Hunter, and he was not playing Hunter. I was like, uh-oh, this class might be in trouble. So I have no real insight as to, from low sample size, Secret Hunter seems, Titan Forge Trap seems like a good card still, but, I haven't faced a single one.
Well, I guess maybe you just better hang out in Sidisi's stream, because he will definitely be playing Hunter, and he will be innovating. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up this. I think we've hit every class. Doc, what are your final thoughts on basically the prospects of the meta?
I mean, there's definitely like room for things to grow. It's just Kiliax is a problem and will be a problem. And I know we're beating an undying reborn horse here. But once Kiliax gets dealt with in about 2 weeks, I feel like that's going to open up the meta a lot, because like we've been saying, he really shuts down a bunch of different strategies and makes it just hard for decks to get over that turn hump or the multiple Kiliax coming out. So once that gets dealt with, I think it's going to like be wide open. But right now, like, it seems like aggro is very, very strong, which usually is at the beginning of a new meta when a new set comes out. But I'm happy with aggro, like, feeling pretty strong right now. So
I was going to make the joke that maybe they need to take Ziliax or the Kiliax portion of it, one of the modules, and change it to your charge minions get +2. But that actually would be kind of broken in this meta right now with jamming it into the pirate deck. Yeah. So I don't think we'd want to see that either. Maybe every time you play Ziliax, you just get 2 random modules put together. That'll work, right? Pilot, what are your thoughts on the meta?
Yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes. There's a couple classes that got very obvious sets of, these are cards that just go into decks we already made, or these cards definitely go together. Shaman has some packages of cards that we haven't figured out yet if they will or won't work, like the Spell School stuff. But there's also a lot of cards in this set that you look at them and you know that this is a decent card. This can go somewhere, but I don't know what goes around it. I think that with the Death Knight set, where there's a lot of decent cards and strong cards in there, like the location, like Ghoul's Knight, but that doesn't win you the game with just those 2 cards. You have to figure out what the other 26 cards are, and it doesn't really give you, yep, this is your direction. You're doing this into this into this, like we saw a lot a few years ago. That was something that people, were very vocal about, a couple years ago, where we got a lot of packages of cards because they wanted to make an archetype centered around this new thing that was focused on that set. They've kind of gone back away from that, but that means that now it takes longer to figure these decks out, because it's not, oh, these 10 cards go in, that supports it, we're good. So I'm interested to see how things develop. I do think that there's a couple speed bumps and, things that need to be ironed out, Unkiliax being one. I wouldn't be surprised if Marin gets touched at some point, because the same decks that are using Ziliax that way are also using Marin along the way, because if you ramp up to that or survive to that, that's a really strong card. So I wouldn't be surprised to see something kind of move there, even if it's just a 8, so you can't play it and the treasure on the same turn. So it'll be interesting to see how some of those decks get moved once things settle. I'm glad that we have 2 full weeks. As frustrating as Ziliax is, I do think there's a lot of room for things to be figured out and counters to come up. So I'm glad that we're not getting the whirlwind of, oh, here's a patch, and they've said 2 weeks is when we're doing it. Go figure it out until then.
I've seen Librarian run a little bit too. I mean, just, anything in any port in a storm, I guess. WorldEight, what are your thoughts on the developments of the meta here?
Well, I think there was a lot of expectation coming into this expansion that things were going to get really fast, and we see some of that with the pirates, like that fulfilled the prophecy. But then we saw a lot of like theorycraft, like, oh, this spell druid deck is gonna, win on 5, and that didn't really happen. A lot of people are really freaked out about concierge, and that might still come to play. I mean, 0 cost spells, pretty intimidating. So, I'm really glad they're taking extra time, because, I think we had alluded to it in earlier parts of the show. There are decks that are going to counter these slow, greedy decks, right? Like the most obvious candidate right now is Lamplighter Rogue. It puts a very clear clock on the control deck to, you have to deal with this deck by turn 8. Like, you can't just sit behind a taunt wall and turtle, because your win rate against this deck is going to be 20%. And that's backbreaking to have a popular matchup that you're 20% against. And then maybe those decks start disappearing, and then, the ebbs and flows of the decks that are popular will change, because if you start seeing less on Kiliax, maybe you can play your big taunt rock and roll warrior, because that was kind of what was stopping you, right? Was that you were getting soloed by this one card. So we'll see. I love watching these things develop. I think 2 weeks is probably a good time for them, because they have to lock in changes, I think 5 days before. So roughly, they'll have a week to do full data assessment, and then like a day or two to make decisions, and then lock it in. So I think they'll have a lot of data to work with, and then they can discuss it. And I think that's really prudent of them. And as players, I think there's still a lot of people brewing. I would like to see more of it, less leaning on old archetypes. This is a set and a half, right? Like, and there's some doomsayers out there, but I think there's a lot of possibilities. I also mentioned this earlier. I think there's a lot of decks that aren't, like, there's some really strong cards that aren't seeing a lot of play. And maybe it's just me that I'm overestimating the power of like Tsunami, but I think the card's really powerful. We'll see what turns out, but I'm still excited for the expansion. The glean has not worn off yet. I've been winning a lot though, so that helps.
Yeah. I haven't been winning a lot, but I've still been having fun. Middling, I guess, but I still kind of wish that they had made it so that way you could chain tourists, so that way if like and I have no idea what would be broken up, but like, hey, I have this really cool idea where I can play this rogue card with this demon hunter card, but I'd have to chain 7 tourists to get there. and then you know, something along the way. I know Pilot's not a big fan of that, and it probably would be horrible, but I thought it could be fun. But again, if you've been playing the drinking game and drinking every time we say on Kiliax, I'm sorry, you're probably dead. But outside of that, you know, I'm excited about this meta. It's fun. There's a lot of potential to it. I think the tourist mechanic is interesting, and it's allowing for different things. And it's also funny, the things that people were talking. It's you remember how, like, hey, there was going to be, every time they announce a card, it's like, oh, hey, you play this card with this card with this card with this card, and it's an OTK, and like with like Tony, and you do this and you do that and that, and then you win on turn like 3. There's always stuff like that, and it never really pans out, and it's always so different. Like, I'm surprised there's been no buttons deck, you know, and why not? Is there going to be a buttons deck in a couple weeks? Probably, but you know, why not? Why? It's just, there's so much to whatever. And you got to remember too, that in the first 15 minutes that the expansion's out, there's probably exponential amount more games played than they could have ever possibly play tested. So a lot of people like, don't they test this game? Yes, but they're like, I don't know how big the QA team is, but yeah, there's nothing like getting raw data from everybody and then figuring things out. So I like the meta. Couple small nudges. I think it could be really, really interesting, and I'm hoping that, like, this is the expansion where they let things breathe, and like they don't completely, and they've kind of had the cadence of not completely gutting things, but I think last expansion some things really did get gutted. Wheel of Time not only got Wheel of Death, that not only had the correction that it should have had, but they also then hit the location. But then they also changed the way Reno classes worked. Then they also changed the way Boom Boss worked. And they were basically saying, no, we want this deck dead. And it was sad because it was so fun. And they had to do that with a few different things. And I'm kind of hoping that it's just like, oh, hey, let's put Mariner 7, see how that works. Or let's do this. Or just small little nudges to just kind of take out the meta warping power to outliers. And I think that if we can, you know, live with that and try to, instead of just being mad that a deck is good, trying to figure out how to beat the deck, then I think we're gonna have a fun time. And I'm still very excited, and yeah, I can't wait. But Doc, this has been a lot of information. And if it tells you anything about the meta, we just spent 2 hours basically talking about it, and we've barely probably even scratched the surface of what's potentially out there. So I'm full. I'm very, very full, but I'm gonna try to find some room for dessert. What do you think?
Yeah, dessert sounds nice. So this is a question for the both of you. In honor of our Lord and Savior, the Rye Cleaver, what is your favorite sandwich? Pilot.
So probably our local not sandwich shop, pizza shop here does a Cuban sandwich that is really solid. Just, you know, the ham, mustard, just toasted. It's perfect. So that's probably my go-to. I'm not a huge sandwich person, but that is one that I will get every single time.
Nice. How about you, WorldEight?
Cuban, excellent choice. I can definitely get behind that. But I live near Philadelphia, so I'm gonna have to go with Philly cheesesteak. Not with the whiz though. I don't like the whiz. I think that ruins it. A good cheesesteak still has real cheese on it. But it's just an awesome thing. We actually do that as part of our Christmas Eve celebration. My wife and I, you know, instead of cooking anything, we'll get cheesesteaks.
Awesome.
And it's just awesome. You have to get them early, though, because all the restaurants are closing for Christmas Eve, so we'll actually order them at lunch and heat them up in the oven later. But part of our Christmas tradition is cheesesteaks, so I'm going to go with that.
I love that. And
nice.
I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about Rye Cleaver, but since we're talking about Rye Cleaver one last time, don't play Rye Cleaver after you've played Bran, because then you get 2 slices of bread and they disappear with nothing between them. And then you get a 3rd slice of bread on your next swing. I was so excited because I was like, oh, we get the Rye Cleaver, we get some, let's do it. And I swung and it was like bread, snap. Okay, I guess we're done here. So that's just some friendly advice. Doc?
So listeners, please leave us a review. We prefer 5 stars, but give us an honest review with how you feel the show is going, because we want the show to be the best it can be for us, but also the best it can be for you. Reviews and emails is how we do that. If you email us or leave us a review, we will read it out on the show. So please feel free to do that. So WorldEight, where can people find you?
You can find me on Discord. It's just WorldEight. You feel free to reach out to me about any Hearthstone related chat. Otherwise, I am streaming a little bit more on Twitch, WorldEight_HS, or you can find me on Twitter, also WorldEight_HS. And that is spelled out with the letters, not the number.
How about yourself, Pylet?
You can also find me in Discord. I'm in a few different Hearthstone related Discord at Pylet712, Pylet. And then also have a Twitter that is the same, that I don't check as often, but if I find a deck that works, I'll probably post a couple of them there as I have more time to play after Friday.
Doc, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Doc McButt. Tito?
You can find me on Twitter, Twitch, and now TikTok at Tito Santana HS. And just a note for Pylet, you can also find Pylet often in my stream at Tito Santana HS. So if you're looking for him, he's usually there. So we appreciate that. WorldEight, you got any shout outs or anything you'd like to promote?
Not too much. I just really appreciate the chance to be on the show. So thank you, Tito. Thank you, Dr. McButt, and shout out to you, Tito, for getting the chance to do the theory crafting. I think that really shows that you kind of made it a little bit, maybe, but exposure to your channel is terrific. When I was streaming, I had good intentions to kind of explain what I was doing along the way, and then I realized about halfway through I'd stopped explaining. I think you do a really good job of continuing to do that throughout your whole stream. So I want to give you kudos for that, because I didn't realize until I tried myself how difficult that is.
Thank you. And it's one thing. So one thing I learned, I think I said this last week too. So, or 3 days ago, whatever it was. When I had the theory crafting, which thank you very much, that it feels great to be seen. It really does. Because this is a lot of work. But when we had all the chat and the giveaways and playing with cards and other people messaging me in Discord and then Pylet saying, hey, you forgot this and like and this, that, and the other. There's a lot going on, and trying to keep up with the game, play the game well, keep up with your chat, keep up with all the things. There's a lot going on. And for a small streamer to have that happen once in a while, it's kind of overwhelming. For the streamers that do it every day, that have the chat wall that's constantly moving or moving fairly quickly and playing, it's hard work. So make sure you thank your favorite streamer. But Pylet, any shout outs this week?
Yeah, a couple for me. First to the Coin Concede crew as well as WorldEight, because on Off Curve on Wicked Good's website, they keep up a spreadsheet early in the expansion of all the new decks as they are posted and work on compiling those. That is a great spot to go to find it, either on Off Curve or if you go to Wicked Good's Twitter, it's linked there. It's linked in the CC Coin Concede Discord. So that's an awesome resource if you are not looking to spend time building decks, but go find a lot of different things. That's where I've pulled a lot of the decks I've played from, just because I haven't had time to build. And then also a shout out to all the guys over at Squelch, who they're transitioning from a Hearthstone podcast to just a general budget games podcast. And I believe this week was their final season 1 episode. So they're excellent people, excellent podcast to listen to, and excited to see what they do with season 2.
And to be fair, though, I don't think the show's going to change at all. They're probably going to talk just with Hearthstone because they barely talk about Hearthstone. So it's just going to be, old man with food and salt. So I expect really nothing to change. Doc, you have any shout outs this week?
Yeah, first and foremost, Pilot WorldEight, thank you guys so much for coming back onto the show. And as often as you two do it, because I know that we do get you on here a lot, and it's a blast every time. It's so much fun to talk Hearthstone with y'all and hear what you have to say. So just thank you, because it means a lot that knowing that we can rely on you guys when we want to have you on, we'll know that we can have you on. So thank you.
Yep. And when Doc oversleeps, we can bring in WorldEight or
yeah.
Pilot.
Hopefully that never happens again. How about yourself, Tito?
Well, I was going to shout out to the Squelch crew, but Pilot beat me to it. But still, congratulations. That's awesome. They've been around for a long time, and just part of the community is part of why we do this. But is these communities we've been part of, and hey, we want to do that too. And we try to have our own voice to it, but we're influenced by all these other podcasts. Also, shout out to WorldEight. Not to reiterate everything, because you guys know we appreciate you, but WorldEight got second place in the Coin Concede Listener Series, where he came up just a little short. We were rooting for you. We were rooting for everybody. It was a great group of players in the top 8, and yeah. And I had one more, but I completely forgot what it was, so I'll try to remember for Sunday. But everybody, it's been a long episode. It's getting late. I think we're toast. We'll see ya.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
See ya.
Slide two brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.